One thing we're hearing from Brussels, Scott, is this escalating fear mongering about Russia using chemical weapons. The NATO Secretary General warned about this today. Joe Biden is now talking about it. A number of NATO officials are talking about it. I'm wondering what you make of this. That all of a sudden we're getting these claims coming from NATO that they have intelligence of Russia possibly plotting chemical weapons attacks inside Ukraine.
Well, uh, let's start with the obvious. For Russia, let's hypothetically say that Russia has a weaponized chemical weapons capability or biological weapons capability. Um, Russia knows that they cross that line, they're changing the dynamic of their Ukrainian gambit. Um, Russia went into Ukraine not just to get Ukrainian neutrality, not just to denazify, not just to demilitarize, but to redefine the European security framework. And in order to redefine it in a way that is conducive to a Russian outcome, you need to create the condition where NATO starts to question itself, starts to question its own viability, question the cost of maintaining its current posture, et cetera. So it's counterintuitive for Russia to use weapons that would only bring NATO together. And it's even more counterintuitive for Russia to use these weapons when Russia is winning. So why is NATO saying what they're saying? We'll start with the obvious one. NATO or the United States got caught out with these biological research facilities. I mean, I've been aware of these. I know the guys who ran program managers. These are not new to me, and I've always talked to them about what's going on here. What's really going on here? Why do you need these biological research facilities in Ukraine? I understand the need to capture former Soviet biological warfare capability to account for and dispose of former Soviet biological weapons pathogens that might have been retained, and to provide gainful employment to these scientists so they don't go sell their skill set to North Korea, Iran, any other so-called rogue actor that might be in the market. I don't think Iran's in the market. I don't know what North Korea is doing. This is a purely hypothetical statement. But the point is, I understand all that. I also understand that you might want to build a modern level 3 research facility to provide capabilities that can't be found in the existing Soviet era facilities. But 26? Why do you need 26? What is the purpose of these? And again, a little bit of my background, I was a firefighter here in New York for a number of years. And one of the things I did was hazmat, hazardous materials. I was a hazmat specialist, a hazmat technician, and I went to all the federal funded courses to train about weapons of mass destruction. So I went to Anniston, Alabama, where we trained on live VX and sarin nerve agent. Oh, wait a minute. How do you get live VX and sarin nerve agent? Somebody has to make it. But isn't the manufacture of live agent a violation of the Chemical Weapons Convention? Well, not if it's done for defensive purposes. But the fact that we can manufacture on a bench scale sarin and VX nerve agent means we can manufacture on a large scale. Trust me, if we caught the Iraqis manufacturing VX and sarin nerve agent on a bench scale for defensive purposes, we would have said you're in violation of the Chemical Weapons Convention and UN mandate to disarm. But we do it all the time. We bend the rules. The same thing with biological warfare. The anthrax that was discovered after 9/11 wasn't brought in by anybody. It wasn't homemade. It was from a tube of anthrax that came from Dugway in Utah that was manufactured so you can train people like me on how to operate in an anthrax environment. And so we do this kind of stuff. We're always walking on the razor's edge of legality in terms of the treaties. And now we look at what the Russians have found. How do you explain a research program that seeks to take avian flu, H1N1, remember the first pandemic was avian bird flu, take avian flu and then adapt it so it can be vectored, carried by migratory birds who fly from Ukraine into Russia after having genetically modified the avian flu so that it only impacts Slavic DNA found
DNA.
in Russia. How is this defensive? How do you explain this? Because if this
Scott,
was
wait,
found
Scott, wait,
anywhere else,
Scott. That's the allegation. That's the allegation from Russia. Do you think that they've sufficiently proved it?
It's been
100%. There's no doubt
it
they
has
have
been
the
confirmed
documents.
that research was being carried out at
Yeah.
labs under
Okay.
the auspices of the Nunn-Lugar agreement that were
Yes.
specifically focused on, they were seeking research subjects who possessed Slavic DNA. It's in the paperwork. So,
And you can track, because the paperwork is a contract and the contract is attached to dollars and the dollars are attached to legislation. This is easily tracked right down to where it is. The Russians aren't making this up. They got the receipts. And now here's the problem. The US knows they have the receipts, and who else knows what they're sitting on? So now the US does the old game. The Russians are only accusing us because they're planning to use biological weapons themselves. I mean, that's the extent of the intelligence. I can tell you right now, we are not sitting on communications intercepts that show that the Russians are preparing. This is somebody in the United States saying, well, if the Russians are saying this, what do you think that really means? And you have some intelligence analyst who hasn't been schooled on the reality of Russia, but instead been schooled to hate Putin, saying, well, if I were Vladimir Putin, that would mean that I'm planning a biological weapon because it's a page straight out of the Russian playbook. And I have insight into Vladimir Putin's plan. No, there is no biological plan. And the same now applies because now we're talking about a hypothetical biological weapons attack. We have to throw in, of course, Novichok and Skripal and Navalny. We have to take two cases that have been made against Russia and say they are known purveyors of chemical warfare. And then we also have to bring in the Syrian playbook, and bring back, Khan Shakun and Duma and all these other places and say they did it in Syria. Well, they didn't do it in Syria. Who knows what happened with Skripals? Who knows what happened with Navalny? But they aren't part of a military weaponized chemical warfare program. This literally is manufactured clickbait by the United States government. There's no truth to it, none whatsoever.
And I'm wondering if you think, is part of the motive here, just like in Syria with the Syria playbook, to preserve the option of NATO military force? Because that's what part of the agenda was with Syria and the Red Line in back in 2013. And it was only actually undermined, or it was partly undermined by other people inside the Obama White House who knew that the intelligence was not there, that Syria was guilty. That's why James Clapper went to Obama and said it's not a slam dunk, deliberately choosing his words to invoke the Iraq War WMD claims of George Tenet. And they helped undermine Obama's claim. And we later learned from Seymour Hersh, there was a whole bunch of other evidence pointing to sarin actually having been used by the rebels. But there were people inside the Obama White House who did want to preserve the option for greater military intervention in Syria. And the chemical weapons allegation was the way to advance that. I'm wondering if you see a repeat here as well.
I can say that I have confidence in the senior military leadership that they know what the truth is. I have confidence in the senior intelligence community leadership that they know what the truth is, and that they will bend backwards to ensure that the political appointee advisors to Biden aren't allowed to manufacture a case for military intervention based upon fabricated intelligence.
Just like what happened in Syria.
It's a repeat of that.